equal distance spacing, bam, bam, bam effect. You want every plant, corn or soybeans, to come up in a 36-hour window. Meaning that when the first one comes up, you want all its brothers and sisters to come up in that 36-hour window, because anything that comes up past that, especially when you get up there 72 hours, is no more than a weed. It's not going to put a neuron, it's not going to set pods. So it's crucial to get these plants up in time and fashion. This is just, I'm standing out here in some small corn. There's 58 different varieties behind me. That's the easiest thing everybody can do is plant the right genetics for your corn. Plant what's going to work for you. Put the right hybrid on every acre. Those are just free. It's all the same price. Just make sure you got the right stuff out there. This I call my 10-fold experiment. We actually did this quite a while back, and I was talking to some research scientists. This just gives you an idea how my brain's always working, trying to dream up new crazy ideas. I said, Steve, I said, is there any way that we can influence that air guard, say, from B4 to B6? He said, possibly figure out how to reflect the light back up off the ground, maybe you could add 3 or 4 rows. So I went to the wife's kitchen cabinet, I swiped for 10 volt, went and laid it on the ground, and it worked. Still testing that 30 out 100 acre method yet, but it did work. That's just some short season varieties for us, 105-day hybrid 35F40. That's an early corn early for us. We'll start planting corn around the 15th of March. Harvest this stuff about the 1st of August, try to meet the heat. That's a pivot track back there, but they're capturing 100% of our sunlight. There's no light penetrating through that canopy. Nothing's hitting the ground. I want to capture 100% of my sunlight. This is my favorite picture on my whole slide presentation. This is some more 31N28. We grew a couple years ago, made about 350 bushels. That's twin row corn. You can't really see the other row of ears in back here because they're basically all the same height. But my favorite part about that whole picture is every ear is tipped back 1 inch. And that's a final stand about 56,000, 58,000. Well, in 2008, we grew some 35F40 dryland no-till, non-irrigated, made 322 bushels an acre. I was sick. I had no idea what it could have made. Every ear was rounded over, where it had 2 on it. We had a final stand of about 36,000. So if I pushed that plant population, maybe we made 350 dryland. Funny story, I was at the Commodity Classic a couple years ago, and this reporter of Corn Soybean Digest says to me, asked me some kind of question. I'm sitting in the back because we went to the marketing session, and I drank all the coffee that morning, so I was sitting in the back in case I need to go get rid of some of that coffee. And Gary Porter, my good friend, he's also 7 or 8 time national corn growing champion. We're sitting back there minding our own business. And this gal turns around and she says, and started asking me questions. She said, why does all the winners use less nitrogen than the losers? Well, I said, well, did you just read the story they wrote about me? No. She said, I didn't, because I don't consider you a real farmer because you're arrogant. Well, Gary got to laughing so hard he was crying. So, anyways, I was pretty glad we won that no-till deal, so I guess I'm a real farmer now. But anyways, what I was going to tell her was, is if you look, all the national winners use some form of manure, or the majority of them do. And that's the reason they use less nitrogen, because there's no real place to put on your entry form the amount of nitrogen that your manure is putting on there. So it does look like all the winners are using less nitrogen. In reality, they're using some form of manure. We apply 3 tons of poultry manure on all of our acres, and then we supplement that back with nitrogen. That's just some 350 bushel corn residue. People's always asking me, how in the world do you deal with that? Well, for me, living in the South, it's no big deal. All we do is, as soon as we harvest this corn, we'll go out there and we'll apply some sugar and some nitrogen. I don't care what form of sugar you use, just go to your local ethanol plant, get some of that corn syrup, anything you can get run through that sprayer, and you apply some sugar and nitrogen out there, and basically all you're doing is feeding the microbes. It's like feeding a kid a Hershey's candy bar. You know how it spikes them up and they come down like that? So you're trying to increase your microbe activity, which microbes work down about 50 degrees, and come springtime, all of our stocks are dissipated. So You know, I know you guys get a little colder than I do, so I don't know how great this is going to work, but it's something you might go try. It's not going to cost you much. These are just some old open pollinated varieties back in the 1700s. The one guy who's running for governor is talking about the bird corn, the revolution of corn. We had Quinte Sente growing out there, which is, what, 1,600 years old? Have you ever seen that growing? Looks like grass. You know, ears coming out of the top. So we do all kinds of crazy experiments. B73's out of Iowa State, most 17's out of the University of Missouri, so you get the B by M. That's the #1 all-time hybrid ever planted in the U.S. Be sure that you look on your seed tags. Every seed company sold this hybrid. That's how it became the #1 hybrid of all time. Be sure you look on your seed tags and make sure that you're not planting something that somebody else is selling. You know, there's 5 or 6 people selling the same variety. Make sure you're looking and you're planting different genetics. These are some 93 M61s. They're a 3.6 variety. They've been planted in 6 days. They haven't been up 6 days. They've only been planted 6 days. The way we're able to achieve that is we use Optimize on every seed, along with insecticide and fungicide. This Optimize costs $3 an acre. It's a no-brainer. We get 3 bushels. One on the right is with the seed treatment, one on the left is no seed treatment. Remember, you're going to pull 95% of your nutrients out of the top orange soil profile. So the more feeder roots you can put there, the more that plant's got the ability to take up the nutrients. Everybody says you can't nodulate soybeans if you apply nitrogen to them. That's not true. We run an experiment. We did some triple rate Optimize, and we went and applied 1,000 pounds of actual nitrogen to the acre. And that plant's right out of there. Soybeans are a very inefficient nitrogen user. It takes 6 pounds of nitrogen to produce a bushel of soybeans. Corn, it takes 1.1 to 1. So on all of our soybeans, we do apply the 3 ton of poultry manure. Poultry manure is going to test 40 to 60 pounds of NPK. So we're getting about 150 pounds of nitrogen there. And then we're also coming in there with about 150 pounds of ammonia sulfate, with the analysis of that about 210024. The reason we're liking the sulfur in there is because they're shutting down all the coal power plants, so we're losing all the free sulfur out of the atmosphere. So if you guys probably took a soil test, you'd probably show a deficiency in some sulfur. These are some 94 B73s. They've been planted in 28 days. The biggest challenge we have on my farm is our soybeans get too tall. These are 94 Y90s. They're not even blooming yet. So for me to be able to achieve 200 bushels of soybeans, I've got to do 2 things. One, I've got to be able to control white mold, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And I've got to be able to control this height. We're working very diligently on both of these. Very limited success on either one, but one good thing, I got some stuff on some white mold here in a second. But what you definitely don't want to have happen is they do that, because what happens is they get real tall, you get the internodes 6 to 8 inches apart, they go down and they go to growing across top of each other. So what we did on this height was a few of the things we've done is we went out there and we sprayed Manville, 2,4-D, Pix, Rome, Apogee, 3X rates of Cobra, and my favorite of all, the hedge trimmer.